Okay, so welcome to the 1455 Summer Festival's panel called Adaptation Nation. My name's Holly Smith, and I'm editor-in-chief of the Washington Independent Review of Books, and I am joined here tonight by four excellent novelists. We have Lou Bayard, author of The Pale Blue Eye, Angie Kim, author of Miracle Creek, Julie Langsdorff, author of White Elephant, and Cynthia Dupree-Sweeney, author of The Nest. We're going to be discussing basically what happens when Hollywood comes calling and wants to adapt your novel for the small or big screen. So what I'd like to start out by doing is having each of you tell us a little bit first about the book itself, just sort of a thumbnail sketch, what it's about, the plot, and then where you are in the process of optioning, how long of a process it's been for you, and sort of where things stand right now. And Lou, I know you've been in the process the longest, so why don't we start things off with you?
That's just a way of aging me, I think, isn't it, Holly? That's just telling people how old I am, how long I've been at this.
How accomplished, how accomplished.
The property in question right now is called The Pale Blue Eye. It was a book that came out, I think, this is how long it's been, I think about 14 years ago. And it's a Gothic murder mystery that's set in West Point in 1830, featuring a young Edgar Allan Poe, who was actually a cadet at West Point at that time, and an older detective named Gus Lander, trying to solve a crime in a way that prefigures many of Edgar Allan Poe's own mystery stories and Gothic stories. So that's how that began. So it was originally optioned by a guy named Scott Cooper, a writer-director named Scott Cooper, who had put together Angel Heart, which was the movie that Jeff Bridges won an Oscar for back in 2000 something, I don't know. Anyway, so he put an option on it, and then after a year it went away, and then he went away, and just last year the option was renewed, and now it seems to be moving toward an actual movie, but I still don't trust it because I'm that personality of, I'm the kind of person who just, I don't trust it until it's actually going to happen. So until it's actually on a Netflix screen somewhere, but that's where we're headed. And the star of the movie is Christian Bale, and then Harry Melling is playing Edgar Allan Poe, and the rest of it is still to be determined. But that's my little adventure in Hollywood land.
Well, hopefully you haven't jinxed it by, speaking of it out loud.
I think I did.
You probably
No, not at all, because
no,
because Lou is being so ridiculous, because this actually came up on social media. When was it? Like Variety had it was their front page news item or something like that. When was it, Lou? Like 3 months ago, 4 months ago?
Yes. And Netflix threw a lot of money at it. So that makes me think if Netflix throws a lot of money
at $50 million or something. It was ridiculous.
None of which trickles down to me, by the way, I should say. But that's
whatever.
But it sounds like a lot still.
It does sound, it sounds good. Right.
Totally.
So
family
Angie,
reunions and things like that. Yeah.
Angie, Miracle Creek. What's it about, and where are you in the process?
Oh, okay. So, so since I so rudely interrupted Lou,
not for the first or last time. Yes.
Exactly. At least we won't break into song, right, Lou? Anyway.
Yet.
So I'm Angie Kim, and my debut novel is Miracle Creek, and it's a literary courtroom drama about a young single mother who is accused of murdering her 8-year-old son on the autism spectrum, and there's it's a 4-day murder trial in a fictional town in the middle of Virginia, in rural Virginia, and there's also a Korean immigrant family that may be implicated. And so my book came out in April of 2019. The week that I turned 50, so I'm like a very new novelist. This is like my 5th career or something like that. So I'm very new to this world. And my story about the adaptation is that there was a flurry of activity and a very fun auction among various studios that wanted to option it right before the book came out. So in early 2019. And in fact, I was on book tour in California in April or maybe early May or something like that when the auction was going on. So I had an opportunity to meet with some of the folks that I was talking to, and that was really fun. And there was a chance of my having drinks with an Oscar-winning actor who was, when he said that he was interested in optioning it, you were like, what role could he possibly play? Because he doesn't fit any of the roles, that kind of thing. But it was really fun, and it sort of shows you the craziness of Hollywood. So that was really sort of the fun part of the whole thing for me. And then, you know, and then we had the auction. I went, you know, I signed an option agreement with somebody, and then it's been renewed. It's a 15, it was, I think, a 15-month option. And so it's been renewed once. And then there's, you know, talk of showrunners and writers and things like that, but there hasn't really been progress. I think there was like a flurry of progress right before the pandemic hit. And then when the pandemic hit, everything sort of like ground to a halt. So that's really all I have on that.
Excellent. Julie, White Elephant, what is it about and where are you in the optioning process?
White Elephant was my debut novel. It came out in March of 2019, and it is a suburban comedy about a small community dealing with marginalization. So what happened for me was a producer and a writer approached my film agent and were interested in doing a TV, either limited or a regular series. They pitched it and Showtime optioned it, and they wrote a pilot and went back and forth. I think I was looking at my notes. I think it was about a year before they finally accepted the pilot, and things were going great. And the president of the network liked it. And then I don't know what happened, but they decided to pass on it, and they didn't renew the option. So right now the producer is pitching it to networks.
Excellent. Okay. Cynthia, The Nest.
Yes. Well, The Nest was also my debut novel, and I was 55. So Angie, I have you beat a little bit. Also, one of my multiple careers. I know Julie's, yes, is also. Similarly, there was a lot of excitement just as the book was coming out. I have, I'm not sure it's an advantage, but it's a reality that my husband has worked in TV for many years. Many of my friends are television writers, showrunners, directors, or actors. I am very cynical about the process and about what anyone says to me. Because I know many are called and few are chosen. I just know that the percentage of properties that get optioned that actually get produced is very, very small. So in my mind, the reward was the option. And I just, quite frankly, and the advice I give to everyone who is in the optioning process is take who's ever giving you the most money, because that's probably what you're going to get out of it. But there was a little, Joey Soloway is a friend of mine. She was doing Transparent at the time at Amazon. She brought the book to Amazon. She did not want to produce it as a limited series, which is what I wanted, because, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say what the book is about. It's about 4 siblings who are about to inherit a lot of money, and one of the brothers does something to endanger all of that money, and it puts, you know, they're all sort of middle-aged, so it puts their lives into turmoil. And she didn't want to produce it as a series because she thought it was too close to Transparent. And so Amazon optioned it as a feature film. And that's when I really knew it was never getting made, because it's like making that book into a movie just felt impossible to me. It has 11 point of view characters and all different kinds of storylines. And but they persisted, and they hired a screenwriter, and you know, I'm not going to say who it is, but someone very exciting to all of us. And she did the best job she could do with it, but that property really shouldn't be a movie. And when she submitted her final draft, we all agreed it needed another go round, but the option was about to come up for the fourth time. So Amazon optioned it 3 times, which was wonderful for me. And I took the option back at that time. And we went back out with it in the spring, and I got an offer from AMC that was, this time I felt like I want to go with someone who actually seems really enthusiastic about making this. Like, I've been very lucky, and I have made a nice amount of passive money from Amazon, but let's see if there's someone out there who's really enthusiastic about making it. And I have a friend at AMC who had been wanting it for a long time. They bought it, hired a writer, marvelous young playwright in New York City who is just about done with the pilot. And so, you know, maybe it will happen, but I still think there's like a 30% chance it'll happen.
Well, that's
Holly, I feel like we should explain what an option is for people out there who are watching this.
people like me. Yes, please do that. I probably
so,
should have led with that.
I mean, feel free to tag on, but now option is not a green light. An option is just a production company saying, we're going to take your property and we're going to go away with it for a year or 2 years, or however long it is, 6 months. We may throw some money at you, or we may not. And at the end of the year, if we haven't made anything happen, it reverts back to you. And so it's just the possibility of something,
Right.
maybe down the road. And as Cynthia is saying, the chance, the likelihood of an option actually resulting in anything is vanishingly small.
Right.
There,
It's not a
especially in this
promise.
world where there is so much, you know, it's really a lot, not just because of COVID, but because of the streaming services. Everything is really in disarray right now. And people spent all of last year acquiring because they weren't doing anything. They weren't doing much else. And my friends who are working are, you know, said like, now there's this glut of material. There's always a glut, you know, producers and networks, they want like a million things on the shelf that they can, you know, pick up and try and make something out of. Some have reputations for, you know, acquiring a ton and producing very little, but there are other places that have a much higher rate of production to option. So I do think that if you find yourself in that situation, you have to ask yourself what you want from that situation. Like, do you actually, is the most important thing to you to see it made into something else, which I can only imagine must be a thrilling thing to watch happen. Because there might be someone who can't pay as much money for the option, but who can make it happen for whatever reason, because of who they are or where they are, or because of who attaches, which is, yes, another strange thing. I had a movie star attach to the nest at Amazon.
It doesn't mean attached.
It's meaningless. It's like completely meaningless.
It means they express some interest at some point or somewhere.
It seems so.
Show me the screenplay when it's done, and if I'm interested, maybe I'll do it if I have time and if I have nothing else going on, and if.
Well, for all of you, what was the initial period that your work was optioned for? Before it expired or was renewed, what was your initial offering? We'll start with you again, Lou.
Initially, it was for a year, and then the year expired, and it went away. And then last year, it was renewed for something like 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was. And my age, I can't tell you how many times my agent keeps saying exactly what we've been saying is like, that doesn't mean anything's going to happen. Please don't get excited. This just means they want a little more time to make something. So I have been raised on this advice is like, please don't invest any emotional energy in this at all. I love what Cynthia said about just the option itself is that's your win. Whatever happens after that is
Right.
Right.
It's like gravy.
Yeah.
Angie?
So my initial option period was 15 months, and then my second option period, which it did renew, was 15 months again. And it's funny that you guys say this. I've been sort of I don't want to so rudely interrupt yet again, but I've been wanting to sort of like chime in every time you guys say something because I find this so fascinating. But Lou, I feel like your whole success story in all of this for all of us is just the level of optimism that it provides, you know, for all of us. Because seriously, I remember when we first heard about this like 3 months ago, whatever, that you were like, this was first initially optioned 15 years ago.
Mhm.
And it actually might get made. And there's
Yeah.
a really amazing actor who's like been raving about it. I
Yeah.
think it's really cool for the rest of us to see that just because that initial flurry of activity goes away, that it can't come back, you know, much later. And, you know, because it's just sort of goes to, you know, and I remember when they were talking about when the producer who initially optioned your work, Lou, he was, you know, on record on interviews and stuff like that, saying how he had been thinking about this for years and years, and, you know, and he knew it was going to be made one day, and you just had to have faith. I just think that's so cool. I love that. And I think that's a great story. And then Cynthia, for when you were talking about, you know, the option is the thing that you have to go for. It's so funny because I ended up actually turning down a much bigger option than the one that I ended up going with, just based on my agent's advice, who's, you know, an amazing agent, and I totally trust him. But he was like, look, I really think the people that you're going to end up going with, which was, I ended up going with Paramount Studios, that they're going to, you know, have a much higher rate of success as far as actually getting it made. And so that was like a huge thing. And but that was funny though, because now here we are like 20, you know, whatever, like 30 months later, and I'm going, yeah, well, you know, that didn't really work out. So
but that
It's a
isn't even a
crazy
long
year.
time, honestly, in the world of development. Development goes on forever. And also I want to redeem myself a little bit. I don't want to sound like a completely hardened animal, but like there are so many people in the world of television and movies who deeply care about stories, and they love books, and they're incredible readers, and they're incredibly smart, and they have exciting ideas about everything. It's just that then the hoops they have to jump through, and all the stars that have to align, literally.
Align
that
is the
has
word I kept
nothing
hearing,
to
that the
do-
talent has to align. The talent has to align.
Yeah,
So,
and then schedules have to align, and then it's like, oh, we love this pilot, but we have a similar one. So it's just like so much has to line up before you're watching something on a screen, that doesn't speak to anyone's passion. It's just speaks to how complicated that universe is.
Right, as is just writing itself, and the stars having to align simply to get a book published in the first place, to make sure it's in the marketplace. This is a level of complexity on top of that. So it's incredible. Julie, I'm not sure I got your initial period of optioning. What was the length of time?
Mine was 18 months with the renewable.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, we're talking about optioning itself. What role did you play as the author in getting your book optioned, or was it something you left to your agent to do, and that was sort of their wheelhouse? What role did you play in that? And let's start with you on this one, Julie.
For me, my the film agent put me in touch with them, and I spoke with them on the phone. They were excited about trying it, and I was happy to have them give it a shot. I didn't end up being part of writing the pilot, which was it was very interesting. I would say almost a year later to get a pilot that said White Elephant and had someone else's name underneath it. So that was a very interesting part of it, reading someone else's take on it. But I really it was in their hands. And for me, I just thought of it as, if it becomes a TV show, it's a completely different thing from the book. So there was a lot of just, for me, letting go and just letting it be whatever it was going to be, and trusting that something new was going to come of it.
Okay. Cynthia, how about you? What role did you play in the optioning process, if any?
Not much in the optioning process. I have, a great agent who put it out there, and like I said, Joey Soloway sort of came in very early on and said, I want to bring this to Amazon. And I did meet with other people. And, originally I was supposed to write The Nest for Amazon, which was something that I honestly didn't have much interest in doing, but Joey talked me into trying. She felt like I would be the best person to adapt it, and sorry, they felt that I would be the best person to adapt it. But I got about 8 weeks into that process, and I just realized I'd made a terrible, terrible mistake. And I could not believe that I was having to tell this story that I lived with for the past year and a half, again for a different medium, as part of a team. I just felt like I had somehow landed on the escalator, bringing me backwards in life. Like I'd finally gotten out of the situation where I was sitting at a table writing for other people. So they were incredibly gracious when I went to them and said, you know what, I need to go away and write another book and give this to someone else and let it be their own thing. I actually don't think I should be involved in it. I think they should make it their stories. So
okay, Lou, think way back 15 years ago. So what role were you playing in getting
Zero role. I was playing zero role. And in fact, when the current situation first played out, I didn't even know it was happening. Nobody contacted me or my agents. I had to be notified by a Hollywood Reporter article. Somebody sent me the link.
wow.
It was the first time I heard about it. And so that was exactly, that shows you how much influence a writer has in this whole process.
Yeah.
Do you remember the joke about the actress who was so dumb she slept with the writer on the movie? That's kind of where the writer stands in this whole
Yeah.
panoply. I will say that since then, the writer-director Scott Cooper was very kind, and this is very unusual. He actually shared his first draft with me and invited my comments. And
Oh
so,
my God, how is it,
That's
Lou?
lovely.
Is it cool?
it's not, well, what's lovely is how faithful it is to the original book. I mean, I recognize my own dialogue coming back at me. And so, and the fact that he invited me to do that, I think speaks so well of him and frankly, his security.
So he listened
Sure.
to your comments. He didn't just invite them.
He actually listened. Yeah, things got changed, and it was just a wonderful and really kind of stimulating process. It's interesting what you said, Cynthia, about the challenge of translating your book to another medium, because it was fascinating to me to see how does this happen? What needs to go away? What can stay? And
Right.
it actually, I left it feeling like I think I want to write one of my own of these days. I don't know when I'll do it, but
That's funny. I had the same reaction, because I was interested in the process of how do you make something that's interior visual.
Yeah.
And like I found the process really interesting, and I thought if I ever have an idea that's a movie, I think I might enjoy giving that a shot, but not with this story that I'm sick to death of. So
Right. Yeah.
So Angie, where were you in the optioning process? What role did you
I think very similar to the others. I just talked to all the people who were interested, which was actually, I think, the best part of the process, because the one thing that's great, I'm sure there are many other things, I just don't know because I haven't been exposed to that, but the one thing that's great about all of these Hollywood folks is just how generous they are, and how they just sort of go on about, why, because they're trying to sell you. So, they're telling you why they love your characters and why they love your story. And you just sort of like go there, you're just sort of sitting there basking for an hour going, yes, tell me more. I want to write all of this down and record it and, and play it back when I'm having all of the imposter syndrome moments, which I have every other day, Exactly. So, so that was really fun. And then it was ultimately my decision, which, offered to accept So I guess it was that. And a lot of that was, obviously the money and things like that, but also just the sort of relationships and how I thought that they were going to treat the material. Sort of like when you're trying to, figure out which agent or publisher to go with as far as your books are concerned, you ask a lot of questions about, well, how do you see the vision, like how do you see it? So mine was a limited series, so like would you be thinking of I had 7 POV characters. Would you be thinking of 7 episodes with 1 episode per character, or would you want to do it like over 4 days with the 4 days of the murder trial, that type of stuff? So it was really fun to sort of get into the nitty-gritty of that. And the one thing that I did ask all of them is, could I please, I don't care what I'm called or anything like that, and I don't want to actually write it, but I just love this idea, the concept of a writing room, like a writer's room or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's so interesting to me, because I love the process of writing, but it's such a lonely thing that you do by yourself. And I think it would be amazing to do that with other people. And I'm a very extroverted person anyway. So I was just sort of like, please let me just be a fly on the room. Like, please let me just be able to have the privilege of just going in there and just, I won't say a word. I will serve you coffee or martinis or whatever it is that, I will be, your servant, but please let me just like actually listen in and just take it in. I thought that would be really fun. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, we've already touched a little bit on the creative process and sort of giving over control to the adaptation of a work. Before I talk a little more about that, though, I wanted to ask you quickly, since so many authors these days, there's so many different paths of publication, and it's not unusual for an author not to have an agent. Especially people who are maybe attending this virtual conference, they might be just starting out. So do you think the optioning process, if someone were hypothetically interested in your book and you were an unagented author, is that something that an author realistically could navigate by him or herself without an agent, or they need someone in their corner, at least, perhaps a lawyer or something? And I'll start with you, Angie, since you are a lawyer by profession. Should an author go it alone if they don't have an agent at the beginning of the process?
Okay, so I'm a lawyer. My husband is a lawyer. He was like, a partner in a law firm for 20 years or something. We both looked at, it's not even the agreement. This is just the option agreement. We could not make heads or tails out of any of this. Like he looked at it and he was like, I don't understand. Like, I guess if you really want me to, I will sit down and try to understand it, but my head hurts. Would you really, really need me to? No. And it was the same way for me as well. And I really feel like certainly a lawyer who is not just a lawyer, because like I'm a lawyer, but I have no idea what, the terms are or what any of this means. So a lawyer who's well-versed in entertainment law, who is out in California, who does these deals all the time, that type of thing.
I think you're frozen up on us. Oh, there you are.
Oh, me?
Yeah, you.
I don't know what happened. Okay, I'm not even on. I'm even on land, but anyway. And then the other thing I think is just the terms of the deal. Like I just didn't know anything about this world, and I didn't know who the players were. I still don't really know who the players are. I don't know what their reputations are. And it's sort of like your agent in the literary world for publishers and editors too, is, just my agent being able to tell me, well, this person has, or the studio has, a reputation for being able to get stuff done versus not, and just having that overview and that perspective, I just felt like I could not navigate on my own. So that was my perspective.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Do you feel you could have navigated it without a professional in your corner?
Not in a million years.
Universally, no.
It's very complicated.
Okay.
So yeah, if someone's interested in optioning your work, you need an entertainment lawyer.
Okay.
And also somebody who's willing to be bossy on your behalf. And I think that's writers, that's hard for a lot of writers to do.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We're
I like, there's
introverted
no
people.
way I would ask for things, you know? So.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, getting back to the idea of, the creative process, obviously you're ceding some, if not all, the creative control over, your baby once it's been optioned and it's moving forward. At the point when you're signing a contract or it's going out for the option, can you stipulate anywhere in there that you want any kind of level of control, or are you basically agreeing that it's going to be somebody else's baby? And if they invite my input like they did with you, Lou, great, but there's no expectation that that's going to happen. Let's start with you again, Julie.
I know that my agent was negotiating and me on the writing, but I can absolutely see why another writer would have no interest in my being there, and I'm very glad I wasn't. So yeah, that was for me. And once I think they did, they were able to use me as a consultant, and I did speak with them a few times, but I was not going to be there writing any of it.
Lou?
Yeah, I think you just have to cede control in a weird way. Just say, this is what you're gonna take my book and do something with it, and maybe you'll let me have some involvement, or maybe not. But it's in a weird way, it's no longer mine. It now belongs to them, and they've paid something for that privilege. So it's a weird kind of letting go process. I think for me, it's been.
Is it the same for you, Cynthia?
Yeah, I mean, I had absolutely no involvement when it was a feature film at Amazon. It's a little different with AMC. I'm an executive producer, and the fee arrangement is, if I'll get a per episode fee for anything I have significantly contributed to, and that's sort of how it was explained to me, is unless they write an episode that is a complete departure from the book, that I will have significantly contributed to every episode of the series. Again, a friend of mine is sort of shepherding this at AMC, and so he almost wanted me a little too involved. When I met with the writer we hired, I absolutely loved her. She had clearly read the book several times. She had a better understanding of the book than I do at this point. I haven't read the book in years. I hope I never have to read it. And when, sort of my producer friend said, maybe the three of us will get together. Oh, he said they hired someone. This was actually fascinating. They hired someone to do a chronological timeline of the book.
Oh,
The book is not chronological. So it was an absolutely fascinating document to read, but he wanted me to.
You could have used that when you were writing
Yeah.
the book.
I know. That's what I
totally.
said, you can pay someone to do this?
Yes.
But he wanted me to catch errors. And I said, I have to tell you, Emily, the writer, has so much of a better understanding of this book than I do. I can see one very obvious error here, which is that unfortunately you started in the wrong year. So everything's off by about 4 years. But yeah, I want to be helpful if they need me, but this woman, she's just this amazing, young, talented playwright, and I'm excited to see what she does with it and the decisions she makes. And I would say that one of the best parts about this iteration of the option of the nest is getting this young woman probably the biggest paycheck she's ever had in her life.
Oh.
And after a terrible year of no theater and no one working in New York City. And so that to me feels like, if nothing else comes of it, that Emily is making some money just feels amazing.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
yeah.
So it sounds like you're all comfortable sort of envisioning the novel and the produced novel being wholly separate entities, and that's simply
We don't have any choice. We don't have much
Well,
choice.
I know that's right. I'm just
Well, I think some people, I mean,
like I told my
Yeah,
children.
yeah.
no, I think some people do want to tackle it on their own. Like one of my really, really good friends that I probably speak to daily is Janelle Brown.
Well, I'm friends with Janelle.
Are you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to text her right now and let her know. We do the New York Times spelling bee together every day.
Oh,
So
that's
anyway,
great.
so she is actually writing her,
Right.
you know, like the pilot and stuff. And she was actually like, oh, I can't do anything for the next couple of days because I'm finishing up my pilot. And I was just like, it's so weird that you're writing your own pilot, you know, or your own episodes or whatever, because it does seem like to me, for me, I never want to read, you know, Miracle Creek again for the rest of my life because I'm so sick of it. But I can see, you know, like maybe 10 years from now, you know, if we have a loose situation, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'd love to read the screenplay of that and see what's happening. But my editor for my second novel that I'm working on right now, he has had two books. He's also an author, and he has had two books made into a movie, which won an Academy Award, and one into I think it's a made-for-TV movie, not movie, TV like limited series or something. And he told me, I was talking to him about Miracle Creek, and I was saying, you know, oh, blah blah option, blah blah blah. And he was like, do not even think about getting involved. And he said, you know what? And I thought this was the best point that you could have made. He said, you know what? You are like, you should think of yourself as like the grandmother for your, you know, with respect to, you know how like when you're the grandma, well, I mean, I'm not a grandmother, but you know, you're supposed to be like enjoying it, but not really getting involved, like feeling proud that you had some relationship to this, but you're not really the person who's in charge of the day-to-day responsibility. And if things go wrong, you go, oh, well, I did the best I could, but whatever, you know?
You get to dandle it. You get to dandle it on your
and he was like, so that's what you do. And, you know, that's how you should think of it. Don't even think about going near it as from a writing perspective. Of course, he was also trying to get me to write my next novel. So focus on that stuff.
Yeah. I gotta say, I am a grandmother and it's hard not to be involved.
Oh, really?
It's hard to just hang back. You gotta like, yeah, I want to get in there. So let me ask, when you were writing these books that we're talking about today, I know you've all got multiple projects and various books, but for these books, when you were writing them, did you have an inkling that there was something cinematic about them? Were you thinking like that long term or sort of that big picture, or was it sort of a pleasant surprise that someone took your work and thought, hey, this belongs on the screen? Cynthia, why don't you start with that?
I never thought anyone would read The Nest, much less make it into a movie. No. It was my first book. It was the first book I ever wrote. I went back to get my MFA when I turned 50. I started the book there. I just wanted to finish it. I really, truly had I hoped someone would publish it. And the thought that anything else would happen was so far beyond my imagining. So no.
Great. Julie, how about you?
You always hope, and I would fantasy cast it, but I never really thought it would.
Angie?
So like Cynthia, this was my first novel, and I never even thought that it would get made. In fact, I was doing an event maybe like 6 months ago, and I was sort of showing them various things that are up on the wall of my writing nook, which is a literal closet where I write. It has nothing, but I was taking down all of my Miracle Creek things and really trying to get into this new novel. And they were like, what is that? And it was it's, like you see something every day and it just sort of becomes invisible to you and don't even notice it. It was the sign that said, this is not a novel. in big all cap letters. And it was my reminder to myself that when I was writing Miracle Creek, that I didn't expect it to become an actual novel. Like this was going to be my practice novel, you know, that I would write and then I would put it away into a drawer, and then I would really get to write my next novel, which is why I did stupid, crazy things like having 7 POV characters and things like that, and write a murder mystery.
Same.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, write a murder mystery and, you know, be 2 years into writing it without having no idea who the murder, you know, who the killer was and any of that kind of stuff. And so I definitely did not think that it was going to be like that. Having said that, I have a theater background, and that's, you know, and I never wanted to be a writer. I always wanted to be an actress. And so I feel like that when I was writing it, I always envisioned scenes, and I always had the actors in mind of who I thought would like play them just for myself, just so I could like see their faces. And then I would sort of like pace around and be like, okay, what would they be saying? And sort of do this method acting type thing. And I call it my method writing. And then I would, you know, try to sort of almost transcribe what I saw in my mind. So in that way, it was, I guess, you know, cinematic, but not, you know, not in an intentional way. It's just my writing process.
Great. Lou, was it cinematic from the outset?
I guess I think all my books are cinematic because that's the way I think, because I grew up around movies, and so I feel like that's the way I imagine, and I do exactly what Angie does. I read out loud and I do scenes, and I also have a theater background, so dialogue, for instance, feels really natural to me. I did want to say one interesting dislocation that's happened over the last few months, now that it looks like there's a movie happening, is as people rush to congratulate you, there's this weird thing like, well, I wrote that book 15 years ago. I haven't actually done anything different. So there's this weird way in which you are declared a success by our culture when a production company declares an interest in you. When somebody talks about making a movie or a TV series about it, suddenly you become, in the eyes of our culture, our larger culture, successful, which is interesting to me because the book itself is the same book that's always been there, and it's something I struggle with a little bit, even as I feel enormous gratitude for what's happening around me.
Right, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
I haven't done nothing.
Yeah, I have. You know, my second book came out a few months ago, and the first question everyone asks me is if it's been optioned.
Yes.
And it hasn't, for very good reason. It really doesn't lend itself to anything but sort of a small indie movie, you know. So maybe some actor or director will fall in love with it, but that's the only chance that ever has of living. And I don't, you know, that's not a measure of success to me. I don't ever want to be in a television writer's room, or I just want to write novels. The fact that I can do that is so, I'm so grateful. And it's, you know, just this incredible thing that happened in my life that I never thought would happen. But it is just funny to sort of, I have found myself a little bit on the defensive about it. And it's like, I wrote a novel. Do you know how hard that is?
Read it sometime.
Yeah.
The option was easy. The 2.5 years of writing that book was like really hard.
Yeah.
Now that all of you have had experience, you know, at different points in the process and different sort of iterations of the process, what's something that you learned along the way that you wish maybe you knew from the outset that maybe would have made things easier for you or just more manageable? Julie?
About the option, about all of the film process, or about anything?
Just the process, the experience in general of going through the optioning process, having something out there, having people maybe taking it, maybe passing on it. Is there anything that you learned sort of that in retrospect you think, hey, if I had known that at the beginning, perhaps the process itself would have felt different for me, or I might have experienced it differently?
Well, I think it is really good to go in knowing that there's a strong likelihood that nothing will ever come of it, and just enjoy whatever happens, which I think I really did. It was just really fun to me that other people were really working on this and making something new of it. So yeah, getting it made into something would be icing on the cake, but I really enjoyed it all.
Lou, anything you learned along the way that you would have liked to know at the beginning?
Just that I have zero control over this process that we've been discussing for the last 15 minutes. And so the only thing I can control is my work.
Yeah.
And that's what I try and invest all my energy in, you know. That's because that's the one thing I can affect.
What about you, Angie?
I think very similar to Lou. I wish that I hadn't, I'm glad that I enjoyed the process, and because I did enjoy it and it was really fun, but I wish that I had not focused on some of that stuff as much and just focused on writing my next novel, which is what I'm doing currently. You know, it's because I'm trying to be kind to myself right now, my present self, and I'm, you know, kind of miserable writing right now. So I wish that were done. I wish that I had focused on that earlier so that I wouldn't have to do it now. So
Cynthia?
Hey, Angie, the second novel is really hard. Email me.
yes, for sure. For sure.
I think that what Lou said is absolutely right. And then I guess the other thing I think of, which also relates to something that Lou said, is that it's become some sort of, you know, arbiter of success for a novel to get optioned for something. And it is, and of course it's exciting, and sometimes it does work out in really amazing ways, which is wonderful for the life of a book, or can be. But writing a book is really hard, and you should put all your energy into just writing the best book you can write. And if something else happens after that, that's great. But if you're writing a novel to get optioned, you should just write a pilot, because that is a really painful way to go about making a movie or a television show.
Well, is there any other advice you might have for the aspiring novelists out there who are certainly going to be watching this panel, whether it pertains to optioning or not, something you think, you know, it would be helpful for young writers to know, or again, maybe a lesson learned in your own writing career, whether it's related to optioning or not? Anything you wanted to add to the audience tonight? How about you, Cynthia?
Well, you know, the advice I always give is just to read as much as possible. Read when you're stuck, read when you're feeling, when you have imposter syndrome and you're having a terrible day. Reading is always the thing that gets me out of a rut. I do think you have to be kind to yourself, and, you know, sort of buckle in for the long haul. Like, there are going to be good days and bad days, and the good days don't make you a great writer, and the bad days don't make you a worse writer. It's just doing the work and putting it all, you know, don't leave anything, put it all on the page.
What do you think, Julie? What do aspiring writers need to know?
Just to keep at it. Don't wait for the muse. Just keep, for me, it helps to have a schedule, just even when I don't really feel like it. You just never know what will happen. So yeah, it's the work.
Angie?
I think, you know, definitely what Cynthia and Julie were saying about, you know, focusing in on the work, because that's the part that you can control, certainly. But just to be a little bit different and not say exactly the same thing that, you know, and only repeating the things that they're saying, are, you know, two things. One is just how inspiring Lou's story is for me. So just being patient, and just because things don't happen right away. I know we're in this immediate culture where, you know, everything is just sort of like right now. And if it doesn't happen right now, then, you know, you just don't even care about it. But that, you know, clearly Lou's story shows that to be false. And I just find that so inspiring. So I love that, and just keep stuff like that in mind. And then the other thing I would say is, really, for me anyway, I think find an amazing agent that you really, really trust. And whether that be, you know, I have an amazing literary agent that, you know, like I talk to her all the time, and whenever I'm feeling the imposter syndrome, which is like often, you know, that I can talk to her about it. And same thing with my, you know, TV film agent too. It's not the same person. It's not even the same agency, and she's the one who recommended me to him. But it's just, you know, having people that you really trust and that you trust to do an excellent job representing you, it just sort of lets go of that little voice in your head that says, oh, is my work like, could it be getting better, representation out there, except that I just don't have the right people representing. You just don't want any of that negativity. So I think having people that you really trust and that you actually like hanging out with, I think is really important.
Lou, how about you? Any final piece of advice for the
Gosh.
authors out there?
This has been all great advice. I would just say write something you love, write something that makes you want to get out of bed every day and keep writing, because it's tough. It's a tough business. So just find something you love to write, a story you love, and tell it. Right.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for participating. Our wonderful panelists, Lou, Angie, Julie, and Cynthia. Thank you for watching, and thank you for participating in the 1455 Summer Festival. We appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of the festival. Take care.
Thank you, Holly.
Thanks,
you.
Holly.
Thanks.